And y'all don't know what they told you, but if it don't match up with his holy word, then homie, they need to back up. Some they pretend like they get them, they twisting facts up. That's why we digging those scriptures to know the master. Yeah, homie, we have think if we want to get.
So this new book Jesse and I are working on, we're talking about new forms of church. And my struggle with a strictly hip hop church is we tend to absent the elders. They tend to be very young churches, and you don't have this kind of cross fertilization. You might get someone my age in a hip hop church, which I'd be cool with, but then I become the elder at 49. There's no 70 or 80-year-old folk in that church. So I think the struggle with the hip hop church is going to be, how are you going to attract elders in the short run? In the long run, we will become elders, right? And I struggle with how we, you know, it's kind of like, it would kind of like if I said, I'm going to start a church around gospel music. If you would have done that at, let's say, when Thomas Dorsey first birthed this thing, it was a very genre-specific, generation-specific type of entity, how one does that. So part of what I'm trying to argue for is, how do we develop a church that has a hip-hop sensibility, or integrates hip-hop as a form of worship, as it might inform worship, while also tying in both elders and younger generations, right? I don't know how you do that, because if you go strictly hip-hop, there's a new church in LA, the Underground Church, great little church. And the brother who started it came out of a church. It started the Sunday night service. It's thoroughly hip-hop. I mean, this guy was a professional dancer, so their hip-hop dance piece is like off the chain. I mean, I post some of this stuff myself on Facebook on my Vimeo page. It's tight, but the struggle is they're young. So when you're young, you have a number of struggles. And you all are funded quite differently. But in most traditions, your funding base comes from your Sunday offerings, where you always go up and come back down. So the point becomes, how do you fund the church, right? But I think from my perspective, I think if the church misses hip-hop from a cultural aspect that can inform how we do worship, aesthetically informs the principles and practices of, I think excellence in hip-hop, I think it's why we're missing a generation. Because I think hip-hop, a lot of hip-hop artists are authentic, they're transparent, they're honest, they see their vulnerabilities, they perform with the spirit of excellence in terms of how they storytell, use beats, etc., mix, remix, deal with the complexity of their lives. And I think if the church misses that as a principle to form our ministry, that's why we're missing the hip-hop generation. So that's my basic argument, right? That there are things that hip-hop, just like I was just getting my iPod synced up. Listen to Jay-Z and Kanye's latest album. Have you heard it yet?
Not yet, no.
It's confusing as heck. They start off saying, do I need the church? Basically, no. Somebody in a non-believer. Then they come back a track, 3 or 4 tracks later saying, talking about Mary and Joseph. How do you deal with that, right?
Right.
I think with holy hip-hop, they've come over here and they've done something because of their, I think holy hip-hop's kind of perspective of being so clean in many ways, and trying to, I think, wave off its critics, right? And then we had the little fall where a couple of brothers had issues. Even I think the Ambassador album, he said Stop the Funeral. Have you heard that album yet?
I haven't heard it.
It's good, because basically he said, I did mess up, okay, but I ain't dead yet. You know, I'm living under grace. But I think you should have said that prior to, when they were trying to be, and I understand the pressure they were under. So I think holy hip-hop, the problem with holy hip-hop is not grimy enough to reach those who are outside the church.
Right.
Something whatever a hip-hop church does, it has to do with, I think, the issues of hip-hop. And I think the issue of hip-hop is, it really confesses, I got issues. You know what I mean? That in my living under grace, I got some issues. I'm that Romans 7 Christian. The good I would, I do not. That I do not do. The very thing, I don't even understand why I'm living like this here. I think unless the church embraces that as a value that will journey with you, while you become what God is calling you to become, and even as you get to those various points in your life, you might fall later on. As we're now all reeling from Zachary Tim's death this week. You know, Zachary Tim's pastor of New Destiny Church in Orlando, Florida, 70,000 members, you know, died in a hotel room this weekend. 42 years old. Someone's saying they're now trying to put him to be drug related. But our brother has some serious issues. But how do we journey with folk like that? You know what I mean? Versus he got extramarital affair, and he and his wife split up. And I think until the church says we're able to deal with your journey, and that we live under grace while not abusing grace, but we do live under grace, it's going to be problematic. And I think hip-hop says to us, okay, I'll give you that. That's okay. And so that's how I'm kind of riding on this thing. You know what I'm saying?
There's tension. There's a real tension
that
we have to deal with
we gotta
as
walk
a church.
tension. We got to walk in the tension. I mean, in reality we do every day. We just don't fess up to it.
Right.
I mean, I'm 49. I walk in the tension every day of trying to live holy while having jacked up thoughts. You know what I mean?
Right.
Tripping. You know, sinning. You know what I mean? While living a pretty clean life, but still, I have my issues. We all do. But we tend not to make room for those. And I think the beauty of hip-hop is, I do love my mama. I do think this girl's a B. I do love this girl here. I do love the Lord. I do have issues with my faith struggles. And they talk about that. You know what I mean? There are times I'm strong in my faith, and I can almost see God. It's less than that. Like, God, where are you at? And I had those moments, those highs, those lows. I mean, some of the Proverbs or Psalms. I mean, I think David's real clear. I got some real issues here. And I think for me, with hip-hop, this hip-hop says, yeah, you're right. You know, it's like Joan Morgan, her book, When Chickens Come to Roost. She talks about the honesty and the vulnerability of hip-hop. You listen to, she uses biggest first album, Ready Dies, as a clear example of that. You see this guy has issues, from drug issues to alcoholism to issue with his mama.
Family issues.
All kind of, and I'm not saying we should have these, you know, every Sunday, every Sabbath, here's my issues, but you should transparency, authenticity, my real life struggles, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
You know, you look at Kanye, The Good Life, and then the Pinocchio story, where he says, you know what, this is a good life. Then he gets in Japan and says, you know, but everything that was good caused my mama to die, and I'm tripping. Do we have the room to say that? And I think hip-hop gives us that room. I think those values of hip-hop we need to embrace in the church, as well as the values of excellence. You know what I mean? I think we listen to Jay. I was listening to that song "Oldest" that Jason Kanye has out. And I mean, even though I may agree with what they're saying, I mean, the power and beauty in which they do it, I'm like, them brothers are spitting. Now, we do have artists like, I have said this publicly, I think folk like Lecrae or The True. I mean, I think the whole hip-hop game has been upped. But I don't know if we're still that transparent. You know what I mean? We still want to say that I'm living.
Have you heard, have you heard, and I'm really seriously just picking your brain, but have you heard, when you think of transparency, the first album that comes to mind is Lecrae's newest album, Rehab?
Mm-hmm. I've heard it.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, but I think that's probably the closest.
That's the closest
rendering.
And I think that, and I think many times hip-hop is called critiquing secular hip-hop, and that's cool. But I think that we have to continue to go in that direction. I think, and I think Lecrae has a great promise. Not only is a great rapper with dope beats, I think his lyrics are tight as well. I think he's one of our greatest promises and hopes that I'm not doing. So that's where I struggle is, man. But I think that the beauty of planting churches that are sensitive to the struggles that the hip hop generation is going through, in terms of their faith, their disconnectedness to church, as a means by which to get their spiritual nourishment from. How do we become that for them? So I think the real issue is, for most that I've talked to the generation, they say, you know, in many ways, the church is irrelevant to me. It doesn't help me live my life. You know, and it doesn't deal with the reality of what I really struggle with as a young adult.
And what I see on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I've always said that my motto has been, how do you live an edited life in an unedited world, while sometimes living an unedited life? Yeah. That's the reality. You know, when I talk to sisters in the church or brother in church, it's real life is really like, this area I got together, this area, Rev, I'm struggling with. Can I handle that? You know what I mean? When a brother comes to me and says, I'm gay, what do I do with that? You know, says my boyfriend just moved in, because he didn't get him out tomorrow. How do I deal with that? You know what I mean? And that's been my struggle as an older person, trying to be a pastor to the hip-hop generation, while realizing we have some values that conflict. But still, how do I impart upon them the values from Scripture to inform their lives, while walking with them on the journey of maturation, while realizing either they mature spiritually, then like I have lapses, do I make room for that? You know what I'm saying to you?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best of the hip-hop church embraces the transparency and struggles. I think hip-hop, secular hip-hop, I think really is very open about. Like many people say, you know, not many people, people like James Cone, Anthony Penn, or Robin Sylvan says that, or John Michael Spencer, they would say that secular music is more honest than Christian music. We say every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before. That's not true. Sometimes my Friday's worse than my Monday. It's not sweeter. Sometimes my Sundays ain't good. You know what I mean? So every day ain't sweeter.
Right.
Every day ain't sweeter. But how do I honestly confess that? And I think hip hop says, yeah, I can't, I'm gonna just be honest with you. I'm not a human. I don't know what I am. You know what I mean? So I think that's the problem with hip hop church. If we can do that and bring those sensibilities, I think we can have a dialogue between what we might call secular hip hop and Christian hip hop. Because in my issue, you know, how do we define what is Christian hip hop? Is it lyrics? Is it music? Is it a Christian singing hip hop? You know what I mean? When I look at stuff that J. Moss does, I like stuff that Kirk Franklin does. I mean, some of this stuff, the lyrics are theologically whack. But he's a Christian singing music, and also my spirit. So how do we define that? You know what I'm saying? So I'm just struggling with those kinds of issues. And I think that by and large, the church is losing it because you have on the one end people like yourself that I applaud who want to build a hip-hop church and really reach that generation. The other end of the continuum, the other extreme of the continuum is G. Craig Lewis. It's all demonic. Right inside that are my age group of elders saying, what is that stuff that I don't know what you're talking about? And you're crazy as well. So for
plasma, half for the cats I seen, they don't really know the Lord. Think my views are extreme, think I'm going overboard, but they ain't read a page of the place where he spoke it for himself in the man is made. That's what I be quoting for.